Hello! In this video we're going to be taking a little bit more of an intermediate approach to jamming on the ukulele using a track that I wrote called Scarlet Summer. We did a beginner course with this with the first 3 layers, so check that out if you haven't already. These 3 will be upping up the difficulty a little bit and using some new techniques along the way. We're going to be learning how to do some strumming, some finger picking, and some melodic playing. So let's go ahead and dive in with the strumming. I'm going to bring my camera down here, and it's going to sound something like this when you play the strum part with the backing track. Pretty neat, right? Well, to learn this, we're first going to work on the chords. And if you remember in the basic beginner version, we had 2 very easy chords. These are a little bit more complex. To play these, same names, still F add 9 and A minor 7. To play the F add 9, we're going to take our middle finger, place it here on the 5th fret of the C string. We're going to take our ring finger, stack it underneath to the 5th fret of the E string. Notice how my nails start to turn towards my shoulder out here, right? The shoulder of my playing arm. That can help get the angle needed. And then my index finger is going to fit here on the 3rd fret of the A string. So we have 0, 5, 5, 3. I love this chord. I have used this chord in so many original songs that if you know where to look for it, it becomes comical. I love the sound of this chord. So this is our F add 9. The next chord, the A minor 7, we're just going to make one alteration. We're going to keep all these fingers on the strings they're already at. Then we're going to take the middle finger here and we're going to move it down 1 fret to the 4th fret of the C string. The trick here is you see that the fingers go more straight up and down with the frets when they were more angled towards the playing arm shoulder before. That's the trick to making this really seamless. Making sure these fingers are coming over and not touching the underneath strings. But you can see straight up and down versus more slanted. So now that A minor 7, 0, 4 with the middle finger, 5, 3. And that's going to sound like this. So we have our F add 9 and our A minor 7. Now that we know the chords, let's look at the pattern that's being used here. This uses a technique that I like to call a sweep. It's also called a rasgueado in more classical guitar terms. You'll see people hear them call it a fan stroke, all sorts of different names. I actually have a tutorial on this that's here on YouTube. Check it out if you've never done a sweep before. The gist of the technique, though, is you're going to use your pinky, ring, middle, and index fingers to kind of sweep over the strings one at a time as your hand moves down singularly, starting with your pinky, then the ring, middle, index. It's a technique that takes some time, and again, if you've never done it before, I highly recommend checking out that tutorial video. But once you're comfortable with this technique, or even if you're not comfortable with it yet, the pattern that's used here is relatively straightforward. It looks like this with the tab, right, where you can see the little 3/4 square and the V signifying downstrokes and upstrokes, but I like to look at it like this. Now you can see it's this sort of strum pattern written out, and the beat 2, you see where there's that multiple flagged down strum, that's telling you to use the sweep technique. So what this pattern really looks like and sounds like is going to be something like this. We're going to go down, miss, sweep, up, miss, up, down, up, where again, the dotted arrows just show you where you should miss the strings. You're still moving the hand, keeping that motion consistent, and that creates that sort of movement. A little faster. Down, sweep, up, down, sweep. And this is what our pattern sounds like. We're going to do it twice on the F add 9, and then twice on the A minor 7. Back to the F add 9, then the A minor 7. It's a tricky technique, the sweep. So if you haven't worked on it before, again, check out that video. Feel free to pause this video too to start working it out. And if you're wanting just jam along and that sweep's not there yet, it's okay to just do a normal down strum. Down, down, up, up, down, up. Works great with this too, to work on these fancy chords. But this is what it sounds like when you play it along with the jam. Now, the next part here is going to be a finger picking part. And let's go ahead and hear what it sounds like along with this. Pretty nice, right? This finger picking pattern is actually one of my favorites to do on the ukulele, and we're going to be using 4 finger picking to play this. If you've never done 4 finger picking before, I have a video. Surprise, right? But I got a video that breaks down finger picking concepts you can check out. I like to use 4 finger with this. You can also use 3 finger style as long as you're comfortable. At least 3 fingers is recommended here. We don't want to use a 2 picking style. And the reason is because when we look at the tab here, we'll notice that the first thing we're going to do is pluck our C, E, and A strings all together. Luckily, the chord that we're playing with our fretting hand, exactly the same as the strumming. No difference whatsoever, which is awesome. And so I like to pluck my C, E, and A with my index, middle, and ring fingers here. Then I'm going to pluck the G with my thumb, then the C with the index, E and A with the ring and middle, then the G with the thumb, C with the index, and then the E and A with the middle and ring, and then the G. And what's fun about this is it's really easy to get lost, right? Because you see we've got the C, E, and A together, and then G, C, E, and A together, G, C, E, and A together, G. It's easy to get misplaced because of this pattern, but this is what makes this pattern so awesome when you speed it up. You'll see that C, E, and A, G, C, E, and A, G, C, E, and A, G, and then it restarts. So really slowly, that looks and sounds something like this. C, E, and A, G, C, E, and A, G, C, E, and A, G, restarts. And as you speed it up, you'll hear it just has this great groove and rhythm to it. I'm going even faster than we need to, but you can hear that sound. You can do it still with 3 fingers too, where the thumb is just alternating between the G and C strings. That's another great way to work on it. But this is truly one of my favorite picking patterns, and we're going to be doing it with our F add 9 there, 2 run-throughs. Then we're going to switch to that A minor 7. Back to the F add 9. Same thing that we were just doing with strumming. And with the recording on GarageBand, that's going to sound something like this, or on the backing track rather. Now from here, we go on to the melody. The melody is a little tricky because of this thing called syncopation. I'll explain that in a moment. Here's what it sounds like. Very similar to the first melody we played of this, in terms of position, right? It's actually a little bit easier than the very beginner one in terms of movement because we're all right here. But again, I mentioned that word syncopation. So what that means is if you look at the tab here, the very first beat is a rest. That's what that little squiggly line means. So what that means is when the pattern starts, we pause just a moment. On the 1, we don't play. And then we start playing at that point. It goes 1, and then and 2, and. And that's the sound of this, where you kind of have that. That is tricky to do. It's tricky to feel that sense of the syncopation. And what syncopation means is accenting on the offbeat being a non-number, which is where the melody starts here. It starts on the and of 1. If that's confusing stuff, you haven't worked on rhythmic notation before, that's totally fine. You can really get a sense of the feel of this, where it's the feeling of the start of the part, and then you go. You hear that sort of jumping, it's a little lagging sort of in the sound. That's what makes this so cool. To play this, it's actually pretty simple. The mechanics of it, using our same thumb picking technique, which again, there's a video on, same one as with the beginning stuff. That's a great way to work on this rest stroke technique with the thumb if you haven't before. And then as far as playing it with the fretting hand here, it's actually quite intuitive. 1 finger per fret, so the ring finger plays the 3rd fret on the A string. Play that 3 times. Open on the A. 3 on the E, 1 finger per fret, so that's the ring finger. And then 1 on the E. Going into the 22nd measure here, we're going to do the open A string. 3 on the E, 1 on the E, open on the A. 3 on the E, 1 on the E, open on the A. A lot of repeating these sort of notes. It's a cool little sound though, right? That's what we do on the part with the F add 9. When we go to the part with the A minor 7, we do the exact same thing, only we don't play the 1st fret on the E string, we play open on the E string instead, but otherwise it is exactly identical. So 3 on the A string 3 times, open on the A, 3 on the E, then 0 on the E, and then we're going to repeat that, open on the A, 3, 0 on the E, open A, 3 E, 0 E, open A. Right? It's exactly the same part now, just played with an open E string instead. So when I put them together, it sounds something like this. That syncopation, that repeating back to the 3 is what makes this so tricky. But let's go ahead and hear it with our jam track so that we can get a good sound. You'll see, to really help get that sense of the syncopation, I'm sort of moving on that 1, but not playing, and then resuming, which again looks something like this. Tapping your foot can be so helpful with this, but this melody sounds cool, doesn't it? And here's what's neat about this, is that melody works, you can play it, and the fingerpicking works, and the strumming works, and they all work together, and you can do any order. So what if I do something like this, starting with the melody here. If you remember the beginning stuff, what if I do the beginning chords with the more advanced techniques? Oh, that sounds pretty cool, doesn't it? You're more than welcome to mix them up any way you want. The more complicated fingerpicking patterns with the simpler chords, or what about the more basic patterns with the more complicated chords? Also sounds awesome. Or with the fingerpicking too. Just keeps going, and that's what makes this such a fun exercise. Bring the camera back up to me. So this is jamming, and this is why jam tracks are so much fun to play around with. And now if you've worked through these, you have the first 3 layers of the beginner, hopefully, and now these new 3 layers with the intermediate. There's 3 more layers after this for the more advanced to check out too. And as you start to work through it all, well, it's just fun. Jamming is fun. And the best part about working on a jam track like this is if you ever play with other people, these skills are going to translate really well. In fact, if you have a friend that plays ukulele, maybe work on this with them where you can each do different parts It's a ton of fun. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments below. If you'd like to download the tab of everything you see here, as well as a 6-minute version track of Scarlet Summer, be sure and check out my Patreon page, where this was actually a voted on lesson. I think it was a good choice for the month of June. And yeah, as always, let me know any questions you have in the comments below, and I'll see you next time for the next video. Thank you so much.